Avanti popolo, alla riscossa, bandiera rossa.
Now, Chinese state media, time to brainwash you kids.
On April 2nd, U.S. President Donald Trump announced sweeping tariffs on nearly all U.S. trading partners. One detail, among others, has confounded economists worldwide. Some of the world's poorest countries are being hit with the highest rates. Now, why is that? The key issue lies in how these so-called reciprocal tariff rates were calculated.
那么它的这个基本依据呢，实际上就是贸易平衡啊，就是美国的贸易差额或者叫贸易逆差，这感觉像是小学生做数学题，没有任何的逻辑。
It feels like a primary school student solving a math problem. There's no logic or economic basis behind it.
But
bro, don't you understand that if there is a trade deficit, that means that we are not outlaying them. That means that their dick is bigger than ours, bro. Okay, so I see this is the first Chinese state video that we're watching, and they're already not holding back. And it is, no matter what you think about China, it is an undeniable truth.
In other words,
it unironically makes absolutely no sense. To find correlation between a trade deficit and another state, quote-unquote, outplaying you is simply false. Like, I don't need to debate this.
These tariffs are not reciprocal at all.
Do you see Trump's rejection of EU's and Vietnam's 0-for-0 tariff proposal? The most logical explanation is he wants those two to cut China off completely. Also, he seems to not be willing to back down on tariffs on Israel. Is JD Pondon truly legit? He absolutely is legit. And if any of the fucking Euro cucks, or in this case, I guess the Viet cucks, think that there was any positive intention behind the tariffs, or that the tariffs were actually intended to be reciprocal in order for us to return to a pure free market model in which tariffs do not exist, I don't know what fucking planet they live on. I don't know what kind of fucking drugs they are taking. From Donald Trump's perspective, tariffs are being utilized by the world's largest economy in order to remind everybody else, without the necessity of firing a gun, that they are the big fucking monkey in the room, and that everybody needs to share their bananas with them, or they will be economically crushed to a point of no return. Obviously, that's not how it works, but that is the long-term logic coming out of the White House. To think that you can negotiate with the idea they are doing it because they want to return to an actual free market global trade system is absolutely wild. To be honest, otherwise, I have zero fucking clue what he or his handlers want. Just throwing darts at the board. Yeah, everybody's throwing darts at the board. That's why the market is going insane. The moment you were supposed to not trust the pitch that this is well-intentioned and it simply wants to level the playing field for the United States was when we saw how they calculated the reciprocity of the tariffs, aka once they calculated what kind of tariffs foreign countries are putting on them. Like, they just went out and they fucking lied about it, okay? That's it. You can no longer take that argument at face value or with any sort of dignity or logic. And it shows that, they just wanted to make the number as high as possible, basically, so you can milk this as much as possible and utilize it in an aggressive manner in order to renegotiate different relationships on the global playing field. They said, we have the biggest bag. You better listen to us and work against your own interests, or we will financially fuck you up. The one thing chuds don't want to be is chuds. And that's why the pitch worked really well, the whole fairness pitch of it.
So they're not actually ripping off the US, but it's these nations that are already struggling with natural disasters, poverty, conflict, that have ended up in the line of fire. Take Lesotho, an African nation listed by the UN as a least developed country. It was hit with the highest tariff rate, 50%. According to one analyst, the tariff could drive up production costs and force textile factories to relocate.
There's a lot of panic at present moment. Why people are panicking is because the textile and apparel sector in Lesotho is one of the largest employer. When the factories close down, So it means Lesotho will remain with high rate of unemployment, having more than 40,000 unemployed.
And the long-term plan on the American side is, for example, a country like Lesotho realizing that these tariffs will quite literally cripple their economy. So they will hit up the White House and say, yo, daddy, please no creepy economy. Please no creepy economy. What can we do? And unfortunately, a lot of states will react this way because to an extent, I can't really blame them. They don't really have an option. That's what a trade war is. Without the need to fire a single gun. You turn third world countries into colonies and you move them away from your primary perceived economic and military enemy, which in this case is the PRC.
Laos was hit with a 48% levy, while earthquake-stricken Myanmar received a 44% tariff. In Cambodia, slapped with a 49% tariff, workers are already worried. Given Trump's America First policy, it's doubtful he's concerned about people in these countries. But experts warn that this could end up hurting Americans too.
What the fuck can they buy without breaking their own bank? Yes, but we're not only talking about finances there. Once you're in a trade war, the enemy state, in this case the United States, can quite literally start saying, put this and this politician in power unless you want us to keep the tariffs. Let us build a base there unless you want us to keep the tariffs. Lower the minimum wage unless you want us to keep the tariffs. Open CIA black sites unless you want us to keep the tariffs. That's the crux of the idea.
那么你加征关税以后，这些低端消费或者说沃尔玛里面这些商品的价格就会大幅度。
Even so, if the goal is to
And he is absolutely willing to sacrifice the so-called American middle class, what we like to fuck around and call the labor aristocracy, in order to create a new weapon, the tariff gun, as a means to push countries away from China and to make them more subservient to American interests.
reduce the U.S. trade deficit, could Trump's plan succeed?
我觉得这可能
Okay, I know the JD Bondon memes, but will this actually benefit the global south? Well, that's the gamble. If countries and leaderships of countries in the global south go soft on this and go to the negotiating table and start talking to Trump and begging him to alleviate the tariffs, the request on the American side is going to be massive. So we're talking different types of colonial projects, etc., and imperial projects, and obviously some economic policies, etc. If they stay strong and they don't do that, then it can backfire on the Americans and they will end up footing the entire bill. So that's on the international playing field, that's the gamble, that's the bet.
On today's World Insight, sweeping U.S. reciprocal tariffs against practically the whole world mostly draw tit-for-tat responses with blowback and consequences. What does it all mean for the future of world trade? How is China forging a path of stability and growth amid the turbulence?
Joining us in Hong Kong, Hong Hao, economist. Also in Shanghai, Joseph Gregory Mahoney, professor of East China Normal University. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, how many people are working...
By the way, for the people saying that the stock market is booming, you guys do know that you are fucking stupid as shit, right? Oh my God, bro, look at this, so fucking green. It's so fucking green. Yes, it's green compared to yesterday. This is just 1 week. Okay, you're not supposed to compare absolute bottom with a slightly above bottom. Okay, so this might be green, but this is not. Okay, this is month. Okay, there you go.
worried about a possible Black Monday? Your take?
I think as we're speaking, the market plunge is still unfolding. I think Hong Kong is down almost 14% since opening this morning. And I think if we close, at this level or slightly lower than this, then it would be one of the worst single-day plunge in history. All right, so at this juncture, even the US dollar index is falling as well, which is quite unusual. So therefore, normally during a crisis, US dollar index would surge. But then for some reason, this time around.
For an obvious reason, come on, my man, you're a bigger professional than me. Because when a market is in trouble, people move all their money into something that is commonly understood as stable. But because of the way the American establishment is behaving, the US dollar is no longer seen as a viable, stable option, and therefore less people are putting money in it, hence it's falling.
So what does that mean? Are we going to see what some call a 1930s kind of moment?
Yeah, I think in the past couple of years, the US dollar has been an asset for most of the people. In the sense that it's a high-yielding currency, right? So, and then also it has been appreciating. So I think as a result, many of the portfolio managers, have a fair chunk of their portfolio in the US dollar, to earn the high yield and also for its safety as well. So it has been a asset that whose price has been fluctuating together with the market. So it has become a risky asset, so to speak. So I think as a result, this time of this market plunge, because everything is being sold off, and also the US dollar credit is somehow being questioned by market consensus, and therefore people are actually avoiding US dollar denominated assets and trying to divert their allocation towards other parts of the world. Except at this juncture, it's pretty difficult to find a safe haven.
We see the stock market not only in Asia but also in
Exactly. So those of you who are joining us right now, he was talking about the US dollar. The US dollar used to be a safe haven when it comes to different types of economic crises, because the position that the US economy held in the world, which would make most people believe that the US dollar would be stable long term, but because of current unhinged American trade policies, belief in the US dollar is already faltering, hence why people are not immediately flocking to moving all of their currency into USD as a means of preserving wealth.
Before a wrap up today, and also earlier in the Middle East as well, U.S. market the same. So Joseph, as a political scientist, what does that say to you?
Well, I think one of the things that we've seen is Powell was discussing this tremendous uncertainty and lack of confidence in the capital markets. We've seen the rising protest in the United States. But one of the things that I think is really driving...
By the way, don't you find it extremely interesting how in Chinese state media they bring on, yes, this gentleman teaches in China, but they bring on Western individuals to talk about what they think about the tariffs, while I have not seen even once on CNN, Fox News, or BBC them bringing on, for example, a Chinese person to explain what the Chinese perspective on this might be. Just saying.
What we're seeing today, which we may ultimately refer to as Black Monday, we don't yet know, is that a number of countries, despite what the White House has said about reaching out, about trying to negotiate some sort of deal, a number of countries have stood strong and have reciprocated. We've seen this certainly with the second largest economy in the world, China, reciprocating with...
This is what we want to see, so that you guys understand where you as socialists should stand. You should stand with countries that do not give in and start negotiating with the Americans when it comes to this hyper-aggressive tariff policy, right?
34% tariffs to match what the U.S. imposed unilaterally against China. But more importantly, the thing that really stands out to me...
But yes, that's basically the gamble. You as socialists should stand with countries that want to fight this trade war that has been initiated by the Americans, because the only way the Americans win in this trade war is by making a lot of developing countries come to the negotiating table in the White House and say, we will do whatever you want us to do, Mr. President, just please cut the tariffs. Unfortunately, a lot of countries do not have the levy power. They do not have the negotiating power. They do not have the infrastructure the way China does. So we should not judge them to an extent. But in our perspective of what is the progressive, anti-imperialist direction that we would like to see these countries go in is to establish new funnels of cooperation with other developing countries, with China, with in between each other, instead of going back to the most untrustworthy trade partner in the history of modern capitalism, which is the United States of America.
Is that we see China, Japan, and the Republic of Korea all saying that they're going to cooperate in their responses. And this is an incredible, it's almost an upside down development when we go back to just the last few years when Washington was heavily pressuring these countries into an anti-China containment strategy. And now we find them working.
This is another anti-China containment strategy as well, right? You need to understand it. So if you do not want to see China contained, you want countries to move further into being able to rely on each other and being able to rely on China as a stable trading partner.
Together to try to resist American economic warfare.
So now one crucial question, I would love to hear from both of you, different perspectives, I'm sure. Is this just political theater, what the current administration in Washington is trying to do in order to get others to the negotiation table? According to them, there are more than 500,
I'm British and I'm equally cooked. If Britain uncucks itself and starts developing better logistics, trade routes, and cooperation with within a more independent Europe and with the PRC, you might not be. If your state is smart, you might not be. But if they negotiate with the Americans and become an even bigger colony than they already are, then you will be. That's it. That's the game. That's the game. You lose if you go and you negotiate with the bully, or you come together with other smaller guys in order to have enough power to develop yourself without having to negotiate with the bully.
To speak directly to your question about political theater, I think on the one hand, there is the possibility this is political theater in so much as Trump is trying to make a big show and then be able to book some sort of, small but politically fortuitous benefit. But at the same time, there is the U.S. economy is at an inflection point. There is a moment where the previous strategies being used to sustain American hegemony were no longer working, and it's only a matter of time before the U.S. position erodes.
And that is, I completely share the same analysis, but most importantly, I would put emphasis on the last part. It is inevitable, okay? U.S., I'm sorry, long term, you're not going to be the top dog. The only thing you're doing right now is throwing a fucking fit. That's it.
The fact that it's been a house of cards built on dollar supremacy, and a lot of people don't see that as having a long-term future. There's one final point, which is, it could be that ultimately what he aims to do is to narrow this. He may have a strategic target, and in so much as he may be narrowing towards one or two countries, maybe
the best he can try to do, as for example an American exceptionalist, is to slow this down as much as possible. But long term, it is unavoidable because you are playing with an enemy that has a lot more cards than you do, because of the way they have structured their economy, because of the way they have structured their domestic administration, because most importantly of the way they constantly hold their hand on the throat of domestic capitalists and force them to pursue private market actions that are in line with larger national interests of the People's Republic of China. Something that American capitalists do not do because they own the American government, not the other way around, which is the case in China.
Erring against China, maybe he believes that he can bully others, but ultimately create a broad alignment against, say, the EU or China or someone else. So it could be sort of three different approaches.
Yeah, I think Trump really believes that.
I suppose America could win a trade war, but that's only if there is no trade judicial body, so they would have to eliminate all neutral trade bodies first. Nobody's going to create a trade judicial body, but the current plan is exactly to eliminate all neutral players. All neutral players must become pro-American players, and all potential players that were on the quote-unquote China side, even though that doesn't really exist, must get reintegrated in the American imperial project instead.
The trade terms with the trading partners has been unfair to the U.S. And as a result, the U.S. manufacturing sector has been hollowed out. And therefore, U.S. is paying an excessive price for globalization, and now it's time to pay back. I think China right now is not playing along. Obviously, China has obviously a lot of cards to play. For example, the restrictions on the rare earth exports, and also there could be other non-trade related restrictions on how the U.S. companies can do business in China, etc., etc. So there are many moving parts here. So I think it's too early to say what the end game would be, but I think right now, because there's so many moving parts.
Yes, he's on point. China can actually move its private market, like actively move, like actually grab pieces and move them around. Tell its large industries, its tech sector, its automotive sector, whatever, every single sector, they can literally tell them, you do this, you do this, you do this. They can plan around. They can actually play with all the pieces. The Americans cannot, because the pieces run the government. The companies run the government.
Then it's very easy to misfire.
Joseph, if it were political theater, what might be the consequences and the price to pay?
Well, the main problem is, even if it is theater, and I agree with Hal that he is dramatizing this, but it's also clear that it's not theater in so much as he does have specific strategic objectives, and he's already created some very detrimental consequences that are having repercussions. And
it is political theater domestically, because domestically he has to inspire the American working class to believe that this is in their interest, even though they are the ones that are going to be holding the bag. But internationally, it is just a trade war. It's a policy. It is active conflict in which they are not utilizing the tank, the plane, the missile, but the very large American production base that is not as large as we would than they would want it to be, and more importantly, the very large domestic consumer base that they offer to the rest of the world. And thirdly, obviously, the US dollar that everybody is so tightly tied to. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to support the channel and the editor's hard work. And if you want more, join us live on Twitch 4 times a week. Click the link below and follow Yugopnik Twitch to get notified whenever we go live.